Welcome to Cuba, strip mine capital of the world. It's a good place to stop, shop, and live with free parking. Let's drop into Cuba, Illinois in the mid to late 1960s. The billboard slogan painted on a prominent brick wall downtown was a constant shout of optimism to the 1,580 residents here. Life was simple. The people worked hard and they were rewarded by a strong agricultural base, coal mining, and international harvester and Caterpillar factory work. I asked locals, Norma Lindsey, Jack Ford, Sam Chambers, David Gillam, and Sharon Welch Easley to step back 50 years and reminisce with me. This essay is a compilation of our experiences as remembered through a golden haze. If you can't get it by shopping in Cuba, you don't need it. That was a phrase my mother, Ava Boyce, often repeated during this time period. And Mom was right. Need groceries? Dan Palin's grocery store welcomed us with banners and carry-out boys that loaded groceries into big station wagons. Like Hy-Vee boasts now, in Cuba there truly was a smile in every aisle. And that smile was worn by Fred Palin, who knew and truly appreciated his customers. The store hummed with butchers cutting meat on site and cashiers who knew everybody's shopping preferences and certainly their business. Pleasant Row Orchard was in its heyday. Leroy and Ruth Gillam were selling apples by the bushel and cider by the barrel on the northwest side of town. At the southeast edge, Jack Johnson was turning his childhood home, which had been coal mined, into what is now Putman Park. Clothes shopping? Dobie Lemon of Lowry's department store was a dignified redhead who handled all clothing needs. Formal wear to overalls. He was armed with a tape measure, but it was seldom needed because he could just visually size up his customers. Lucille Mannion was similarly trusted in the women's section. Fashion changed at a much slower pace then, and that was a positive because this store held plentiful stock, some from previous decades. How about a haircut? At this time, 2 barbershops maintained the popular short hairstyles. Al Nelson was on the west side of the square and Cocky Lyons was on the north. Cocky charged $1 during weekdays per haircut and $1.25 on Saturdays. Nicknames abound in small towns. They're usually earned by some arresting physical feature or a quirky behavior. Cocky earned his nickname. It is recalled that Cocky was very passionate, especially passionate about local athletics, especially Canton versus Cuba basketball games. Patrons would purposely get Cocky riled up, except in here we always say riled up, about sports and politics. Colorful language and aggressive arm movements resulted. A direct quote from one interviewee, Dave, was, "Made you kind of nervous when you were in the chair and he was holding the clippers." Then you could stop in at Charlie Cox's Corner to recover from that haircut. It had all your pharmacy needs and a popular soda fountain to sit and visit. Dawn and Violet's Marshall's Furniture and Plumbing was on the west side of the square. Imagine a time when a furniture store was right here in Cuba, and the plumbing was handled by Dawn and Marty. But do not confuse this Marshall's business with Franklin Marshall's hardware store on the west side. The hardware store had everything A to Z. Axes to Zerks for grease guns. The wooden floors were beautifully worn, solid, but creaky. And talk about sensory overload with sights and smells. There were open bins of seeds and nails that would be scooped into stiff paper envelopes. The aroma was intoxicating and you could not replicate it today. You also could not ever forget it. And there was the magic of Toyland upstairs. Toyland's annual opening, according to Sharon, meant to children It was almost Christmas time. Children wandered aisles with their parents, admiring toys that Santa might bring later. Ben Franklin's Five and Dime on Main was owned by Floyd and Eloise Lowry. Many of us rode the mechanical horse outside, 10 cents a ride. The Lowrys may have owned it, but Miss Ethel Legg ran that tight ship. I, a country girl with meager finances, learned that Ethel did not appreciate the business of drooling children lingering over their plentiful selection. Using pennies to pay for penny candy? No. Kids quickly learned that nickels and dimes were much preferred. Long before security cameras or staff, Ethel would patrol with admonishments. She would holler out a name and say, "Don't you be playing with those toys." Ethel capably measured out fabric and notions, and she sold everything from back-to-school supplies to tiny live lizards and painted by humans, little turtles. In fairness, Miss Legg also had a softer and generous side. An expert at crochet, she was known to give intricate creations at local bridal showers. Come to Cuba, hungry. The Tasty Freeze by the Standard Oil Station is very fondly remembered by all. And Art and Mary's Cafe was a mainstay. They whipped out pancakes for a dime or 15 cents, as big as the plate. Sam's mom cooked there, and Sam still longs for the classic cheeseburgers. Even more casual dining could be had at Ruth and later Wilma Alt's pool hall. Along with games, youth enjoyed burgers and kitchen-cooked chips. A pot-bellied stove in the back added to the warm memories. The American Legion was at the heart of activities as it is today. The 1960s AM music at the time was ruled by the Beatles, but it was not the age of Aquarius in Cuba. Folks were square dancing to the calls of Bob Hampton one night and doing a slow two-step to 50s country classics the next. And the library, well, in the early 60s, it was a converted home. It was torn down, and the current Spoon River Library was built on the same spot in 1968. It is still a sanctuary for readers, young and old. Readers appreciated James Nelson. He was the editor and owner of the Cuba Journal newspaper. Nelson was the director of all things social, cultural, and historic. He worked long hours and would rest his brain by looking out his big window onto the square. The greatest post-World War II commodity was kids. There was an explosion of them. Education was taken very seriously. You may remember the three Murphy educators. Miss Eva Murphy dedicated 51 years to teaching Cuba kids. Also fondly remembered are Emma Klein Murphy and Arlene Murphy. The Murphys and many wonderful teachers imparted skills in rigorous curriculums, and they instilled Midwestern work ethics that spread with the graduates around the world. The high school band, under various directors such as John Perry, Homer Herrick, or Ron Lane, was 50 to 75 members strong as they stepped out into the street in very nice uniforms. Elaborate high school musicals were skillfully directed by Mary Jump. Outside of school, kids could join scouts, 4-H, and church activities geared toward all ages. They also looked forward to Mr. and Mrs. Jess Blunk's annual Tootsie Roll parties. The Sunday schools were bursting at the seams. Adults mingled at the Lions Club, the Women's Club, the PTA, Eastern Star, PEO, Masons, and neighborhood socials. On the summer Saturday evenings, a community band of students and adults performed. The large and appreciative audiences were fueled by Lions Club popcorn and lively music. As the performers would exit the stage with their instruments, Dobie Lemon would hand them $1 for their efforts. Some young musicians promptly spent their earnings at the nearby movie theater. Life was fun. The Soldiers and Sailors reunion was a hit with all ages. Patriotic Jay Welch, my father-in-law, and others would man a registration tent, signing in veterans who all received a ribbon to wear. World War I veterans such as Starley Phillips were honored. There were rides, annual talent shows, and the food tents. Streets would close for dances. Parades were bigger, with competition for the best homemade float. Along with the John Philip Sousa-sized high school band, you could expect to see Jack Ford in full Indian regalia on a paint horse, with Leona and their stair steps of not 10 little Indians, but 7 little Indians following, all in themed costumes. Memorial Day was a very big deal as people gathered solemnly at the square to hear the recitation of the Gettysburg Address, Flanders Field, and the names of all local veterans. Peony flowers were gathered and carried in a procession to the cemetery by families. There, a firing squad commanded attention, and on the third shot, flowers were dropped onto the graves. At this time, a family called the Clayburghs were enduring the loss of their beloved son, First Lieutenant James G. Clayburgh, who was missing in action during the Korean War. They honored him by donating property that turned into the Clayburgh Nursing Home, but the nursing home would not be completed until 1969. Lyndon B. Johnson was president in 1965, fulfilling John F. Kennedy's term after JFK's assassination. Tension was rising with escalation of the Vietnam War, and the light of Cuba's golden era was beginning to fade. The popular Broadway musical at the time summed it up. In short, there's simply not a more congenial spot for happily ever aftering than here in Camelot, Cuba, Illinois.